welcome to today's Startup Equity Matters. The topic today is from designer to Atlassian IPO to Kinde founder, equity wins. It's an awesome story of working through entrepreneurship and product design into one of the great tech success stories, certainly Australia's largest tech success story that I know of. We're going to talk about exits. We're going to talk about founding companies, employee ownership culture, really fantastic opportunity to talk to Ross Chaldecott today. As you know, Startup Equity Matters is a podcast to help early stage founders and their teams to get more value from their equity. So today we're going to focus on, just learning about like some cool exits and like a great journey and the success that that's brought. I love being able to share these sorts of things with you. So welcome, Ross.
Hey, Jason. Thanks for having me. It's excited to go along this journey.
Mate, thanks a lot for joining. We've caught up a couple of times in the past. I think we caught up at South Start, or you caught up with my teammate Cal at South Start. So big shout out to events like that for bringing people together and creating that connectivity that we need. You're currently founder at Kinde. It's Kinde for those of you that are checking it out. Awesome startup. Tell us a bit about Kinde, mate, and what excited you about this problem.
So Kinde is the thing that we do is we build infrastructure software for developers to help them to accelerate their product development. And Kinde is really, it's the fulfillment of kind of a life's work, if you like. It was a problem that I found as an early stage founder when I left high school, started a business, tried to create a few different products, and found that infrastructure was the blocker. You know, if you wanted to get a merchant account, this is in the late 90s in South Africa, there was no VC going on then. There was no real infrastructure around the internet. And so just getting a merchant account to be able to sell things on the internet was a total nightmare. And we went into the bank to discuss it with them, and it was like blank faces all around. They had no idea what we were even talking about. And so I kind of, after 7 years of banging my head against infrastructure problems, decided it was time to get a real job. Went out and did a bunch of things and was fortunate to land at Atlassian. And in my Atlassian time, I saw the same problem. Infrastructure was a problem. It was hard to do payments. It was hard to change payment plans. We needed whole teams to manage identity and authentication. And it just seemed like this was abnormally hard when you had these big companies that were growing so fast, having to manage what was just fundamentally commoditized infrastructure, not anything useful for the company. It wasn't anything that was accelerating our growth. It was just something that we needed in order to operate as a company. And then Campaign Monitor after that, which is another great place to work in Australia, another great Australian company, and then fortunate again to land at Shopify. And again at Shopify, this is one of the companies that enables just about, I think it's 50% of the retailers on the internet at this point, having these same infrastructure problems. We had a team of a few hundred people dealing with identity, another team dealing with auth, another team dealing with billing. And if you wanted to make a change to a billing plan, you had to go and engage an engineer and get them to do that work for you.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like madness. It seemed like I'd been sitting around waiting for somebody to solve this infrastructure problem so I could really easily go and build products on top of it. Awesome. And no one was doing it. And so Kinde is kind of the result of that. We wanted to solve that problem.
Love it. Love it. And is it something very unique in the way that you're solving it, or is it more just the fact that you're actually solving this problem and otherwise it's been, just a big mess previously?
I mean, it is to a large extent a big mess. There are companies that solve verticalized pieces of it. So you've got auth providers, you've got billing providers, you've got feature flagging providers. The thing that we think is really interesting is not so much each one of those individual verticalized commoditized products, but really when you bring them together. And so the thing that Kinde is trying to achieve is not just giving you access to really great auth out the box and really great billing and feature flagging, but helping you to do those all in one single place. So if you think about compound products are already, I believe, the future there. When you bring together a bunch of disparate products, you actually gain a real technology and inside advantage because you get all the data from those different products, and you can do really, really powerful things by bringing those pieces of data together. And so we really think about the future is helping our businesses not just to do the technical side, but actually helping them to grow as businesses, helping them to better understand their customers, better understand how their business is performing, look for insights, look for opportunities, and grow, substantially faster than they can today.
Love that. And I'm gonna add an extra question in today because I know you're such a great product mind and design mind. But just before I do that, who is the user or customer that you're currently really focused on at Kind?
There are kind of three key audiences that we talk to, but the primary one is engineers. So we really think very heavily about how do we make engineers' lives just way, way, way better. How do we make it easy to set up, easy to get started, easy to use the tool, and make it somewhere that they can fall in love with? And that's kind of the high level of just about all the feedback that we receive is, I just love this product. It's so simple. You've taken something that was really hard to do, really kludgy and really horrible, and you've made it really easy. And that's kind of the greatest praise that you can get. But then we also think about CTOs, people who are running engineering teams, people who are building products. And a lot of the thing we hear from those people is, why are we paying so much for this infrastructure? It seems crazy that we're paying so much for auth. And the current providers, they are really going a lot more upmarket and therefore charging substantially more. And they're starting to miss that fair value exchange. And we really think heavily about how can we make this a fair value exchange? How can we make this a product that is the right fair cost for what we're actually charging for it? And then the third market we talk to is early stage founders, people who are starting businesses, growing businesses, trying to create that impact in the world. And really, those founders will hopefully go on to become the leaders of organizations that have both engineers and technical leaders within them. And so we really think about how do we build as much community around it. Our purpose in life as a company is to create a world with more founders, because we believe that founders are the people that lead to all of that additional growth. They're also the people that make the biggest impact on the world. If you think about all the biggest technology, humanity, economic and environmental changes that have really improved our lot in life as a species, just about all of those have come from founders, people crazy enough to go and start crazy things. And so we really think about those three groups as we're building this company.
So cool. So for any of you out there, if you have any of these problems, think Ross is solving this, and he has incredible experience in product and design, and he's trying to price it fairly for you. So I highly recommend checking that out. You touched on two things that we care so passionately about at Cake as well, which is fair value, creating a product and pricing it correctly for the stage and for what that company can afford. Big believers in that at Cake. And, we're tremendous supporters that innovation, entrepreneurship can change the world for the better. So absolutely love hearing that mission. And, for those founders out there as well, finding a way to connect what you're doing into something very meaningful for you and your team that's authentic is a really critical insight there as well. So look, I do need to get back onto the equity side of things because it's called Startup Equity Matters. I'm sure I could enjoy some product chat more, but let's do that. So tell us about your journey. It is an interesting journey. Just a little bit, we've touched on a few of the companies you've worked at, but your origin story is quite interesting to me because you started off as an entrepreneur and working with your father. And for me, I saw like kind of a direct line almost of, that being central to you ending up in Atlassian, which was just like obviously such a, career and life defining phase.
Totally. Yep.
Yeah, so you were telling me a bit like right back in the day, you sort of went straight out of school. Was it into almost product design and entrepreneurship? Was that true?
Essentially, yeah. I mean, I was kind of bundling around looking for something to do when I finished high school, and my dad was kind of in the mood for starting something new, and so it just made sense for us to start this thing together. And so we started trying to build, we started doing, just basic website building for companies and just being a developers on call and helping people to realize things that they had. But then we realized as well there was great opportunity. So we tried building kind of an early Shopify marketplace type of thing. We built an early Ticketmaster type of thing, and realized that it was that there was great opportunity to be had there, but the infrastructure just wasn't there at that point, especially in South Africa. If you think about ticketing, ticketing at that point really relied on physical printed tickets. There were no iPhones, so people couldn't turn up at an event with an iPhone and scan a barcode. So it was about physical tickets. And so you've got to build all this infrastructure to actually deliver those tickets to people, to actually get them to them. And postage is, if you know anything about South Africa, postage in South Africa doesn't work. The postal system is basically non-existent. And so you had to use couriers to get tickets to people, and started to become a really cost prohibitive thing to do. And so, there were just so many roadblocks to trying to build this. We tried damn hard, and it was an awesome experience. And I'd say, I grew probably more from doing that than at any point previous, besides maybe Atlassian and Shopify.
Yeah,
that was definitely the biggest growth opportunity of my life. Is when you start off as a leader of a company, and instead of just kind of going through the typical rung, you kind of have this crazy accelerated learning cycle that you go through that most people don't experience.
I had Stuart Cook on the other day, and he had an ESOP exit as well, different product, different journey, but he'd gone very early out into sales. And so he went, into that sales entrepreneurship, and you kind of went into whether it be marketing, product design, sales, all of it in one, much more with a technology slant. But the big insight that I get from it, and that maybe that's just my mindset, is that, having that entrepreneurial, having all those lessons early on, and pitting yourself against the world and not just slotting into a job and a pay packet can help you accelerate your career and get you into those roles where you're leading. And so let's take it on then to Atlassian, where was product management even a role when you started there? Did that even exist? Because I feel like it's a very recent phenomenon. How did it all start there?
So I joined, we were a company of 280 odd people at the point where I joined. I was the fourth designer in the company. And we were a pretty fledgling design team, kind of making it up as we went along. And but then, that was really, I'd say, one of those big starting points for Atlassian to hit that hyper growth phase. And so by the time I left 4.5 years later, we were a company of 1,500 people. The company looked totally different. The team that I joined when I joined the company, which was the Jira team, I was a designer of one on that product. And by the time I left, I had a team of almost 30 people working on that product, just in it from a design capacity. And
that blows my mind. We've only got 30, we've only got 30 people at Cake, and we think we're growing fast, and we are. But it's crazy to think of that scale going from 280 to 1,500, and really, really hyperscaling through that phase. Wonderful experience. And did you get equity straight away? Were they straight on to the whole ESOP thing right from day one?
So I joined a few years into the company, but yes, I got equity granted day one, and it was kind of a weird thing, because it was back then, nobody spoke about equity, nobody thought about equity. It was just like this piece of paper that I got when I joined the company that said, we're going to grant you X number of shares. And it was like, okay, that sounds cool. I don't really get it, but fine. But at least I get my pay packet every month. And so that was great. And there were a few people that had, when they first issued the equity, I think fairly shortly before I joined, they'd done it with t-shirts to everybody, because Atlassian is t-shirt mad, that said, I'm an owner. And there were all these people walking around with I'm an owner t-shirts. And I was like, that's a pretty cool t-shirt, but I don't really understand what it means. And it was only really later on, at the point where we were just pre-IPO, and they brought in an external investor to offer people a buyout on some of their shares, that I realized that actually what I had there was actually worth something, because they told us, you can get X amount per share. And I kind of, just for a laugh, went to go look at what I had, expecting it to be, it's going to be maybe we'll go on a vacation with this money, and suddenly realizing that this money would potentially be life-changing. Fortunately, I didn't sell any of it at that point, waited till the IPO, because that was
already was already potentially life-saving, and then I guess by the IPO, things were even better. So, look, love hearing that. Love hearing that. And so, so you went through a 5x period during that period. How many years were you there before the IPO?
4.5 years. And I actually left a month before the IPO to join Campaign Monitor, which was an awesome move, but I missed all the big parties. It didn't change my equity situation really, but it meant that I missed the IPO parties.
Really glad to hear it didn't change your equity situation.
Yes,
I think sometimes leaving a company can have a very negative effect, and that's something that we all need to keep learning about is how to make sure we protect our teams that have been there through the journey and make sure they get get involved in the success.
Yeah.
So look, this is one of the most successful tech events, financial events in Australian history. And I'm really excited to be able to learn about this and share this with everyone. So let's try and, dig into this a little bit. So I guess we've talked a bit about the granting. We've talked a bit about the moment where you really sort of started to value this thing and realize what it could be worth. So did they give you an opportunity to exit at that point and say there was, like, we call that a secondary in the industry? Did they tell you that there was a secondary opportunity at that point and then you could opt in or opt out? Is that how that worked?
Yes, essentially. So we had that opportunity to sell, a portion that would be a percentage of our shares. And I looked at it and said, this is good money, but it feels like there's big potential. I just had such a strong belief in Atlassian, still do. I think it's one of the greatest companies in existence, and I think it has the opportunity, the ability to continue to grow and scale in exactly the same way that it has to date.
Wow. That's so cool.
So I was just like, nah, I'm going to hang on to this. I don't know if this is the right thing to do. Who could say? But Mike and Scott are just such great leaders. I had a lot of faith in them and their ability to drive us forward. And I just thought it's going to be worthwhile hanging on to these shares. And thankfully I did.
Amazing decision. And how did they, from your memory, how did they help you? We call it like equity story. Did they help you kind of understand where you were going? Were there updates in the all hands? What sort of communication do you remember during that phase and leading up to the IPO to help you understand where you were and to give you confidence that everything was under control?
The IPO is a difficult thing because it's not something that companies going public can actually talk all that much about.
Yeah.
So the majority of it was actually fairly closely guarded and guarded by a relatively small team.
Yeah.
We knew that at some point we were going to IPO. From the point that they brought in Rich Wong and the team at Accel, we knew that there was going to be an IPO coming because that was kind of the point. But when that was going to actually happen was a very closely guarded thing. And you only really find out that it's happening once the roadshow kicks off. So we knew we had equity from that point that they did the secondary. We knew that there was going to be opportunity potentially for us to do well and for that IPO to happen. But beyond that, it was a fairly closely held thing. Until the point where we were going public with that and telling the world about it. So
was that a long period from when the roadshow starts until the listing? Do you remember that? That might be too much detail, I suppose, for where you were sitting.
It was all fairly blurry at that point.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I would have paid, now knowing what I know in the world, I would have paid a hell of a lot more attention to it. But I seem to remember it was it was certainly a long period between Rich and the Accel team taking out their investment in the company and us actually going to IPO.
Was there another secondary opportunity before the IPO, or was it kind of now?
No, there was just that one.
And we're going into the big listing together.
That's right. Yeah. And then, of course, that all happens. And then as an insider, you get locked down. You can't actually sell anything for the first 6 months anyway. So it was kind of a little anticlimactic. You could see that there was some money there. It was exciting to see it grow. It was exciting to see the company booming. But you can't actually do anything about it, as an insider for the first while.
And were there many of you? Like, what was the vibe like within the company? I know you just missed the IPO, but I guess you still had that whole period where it was really becoming real. This is kind of, I think, a common story for exits. You get a piece of paper on day one,
Yeah.
and you don't have any idea. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
worst case scenario, you're actually thinking, oh, do I have a tax problem? Like you're actually, I've seen regularly team members like stressed and complaining that they even have to deal with it, or am I getting my pay deducted? So like, it's some sort of like neutral to, not so cool thing to have initially, but then as the company succeeds, I feel like the excitement and the realness of it must develop within the organization. Do you remember, how that sort of felt and went within your peers there?
I mean, it's not something you're thinking about day to day, right? You're building a company, your head's down building product. So the majority of our time is not spent thinking about,
No, of
oh, we're going
course
to be
not.
rich.
No,
But
I'm sure Scott and Mike would have been very pissed if you were just wandering around the halls talking about
exactly.
your ESOP the whole
Yeah.
time.
But I mean, I will say there's the kind of the standout moment is the all hands where they got us all together to tell us that the IPO was happening.
Yeah.
And like we didn't know if it was happening. People had suspicions that it was going to be happening.
Gotcha.
And so it was a pretty awesome moment to go into that all hands, knowing that there was some important message going to be going out, but not knowing what it was, and then to have them actually announcing, "Hey, we're going public." That was a pretty big moment and a pretty standout moment, and definitely a big time for celebration in the team.
Very cool. As a founder, I can't wait to, provide those life-changing moments, whether it be major or minor. But I think, in startup land, with tech success, we have a massively outsized ability to create financial wealth for our teams. And I'm sure that the leadership team of Atlassian, really enjoyed, being able to, to help their teams in that way and sharing the success. There's a bit of an ongoing joke that the whole of Surrey Hills house prices went up 50% after that exit. And I guess long may those successes continue, because quite often that then leads to further regeneration and further success in the startup space, as people go on to found their own companies and become angel investors or, just go and invest their newfound wealth in their communities for their families. And we just absolutely love seeing that. And it's not always in countries like Australia either. These days you can have global ESOPs and some of that wealth going, all around the world, where otherwise it would totally not be achievable. So look, thanks so much for sharing that. I won't harp on it too much. You've actually had 2 exits, which is ultra impressive. You've also had some liquidity from your Shopify. So after Atlassian, it was Campaign Monitor and then Shopify. Is that right? And there was some liquidity there. So congrats again. Maybe share a little bit, with the listeners on how that all went down, or a little bit of that.
There's nothing more. I mean, it's awesome to get equity, but there's nothing more awesome than joining a company that's already public. Because then all that equity that you get promised actually has value, and so it's a really easy decision to join that company when you know that. And a company like Shopify, you can, again, like I have insane amounts of belief in Shopify and its ability to do great things. Toby's a great leader. I believe the company's a great company. And when I joined, we were already at the starting point of that equity growth. And so there's nothing more awesome than when you join a company and you can see, the value in the thing that you're getting issued. And to me, it was actually, I did one of the smartest things I've ever did, which was say, actually give me a lower paycheck so that I can get more equity. And that certainly, paid out very well in the end and was definitely worth doing. So yeah, there's something very cool about joining, an already public company. Everyone should do it sometime in their life, especially a company that's as generous as Shopify is. And I think that's a lot of what we took in, both the learnings from Atlassian and the learnings from Shopify is a lot of what we thought about when we were building Kind is how do, I've had big benefit from being a part of these companies. How do we create that same sort of generational company, 100-year business? And a big part of that is you create a team of people that have strong ownership in the business, and also whose culture and values align very heavily to the one that we're creating in the business. Because at the end of the day, a company is nothing more than just a collection of people with a shared vision and shared set of values. And so if we can give them something to aspire to, if we can help them to understand that the value that they create and the work that they do will directly contribute to their future potential, their future opportunity to grow and their future opportunity to thrive in this world, then that's a really, really great thing that we can do. And that's the thing that's going to allow us to create a company that's going to be here in 10, 20, 100 years' time is by creating that culture, and that culture based on shared success. We actually have a value, which is, we have two values. One is the company of giants, which is about growing our people and making sure that we help to make everybody within the company bigger. And the other one is to create a bigger pie, which is about, we take the kind
Cake,
of
mate. Bigger
shared,
cake. Bigger cake. Just for
okay, we'll
today.
say bigger
Just for
cake
today.
for this discussion. But if we all, instead of focusing on what is my slice of the pie or my slice of the cake and trying to make that the biggest slice of that cake that I can possibly get, just try and make the biggest possible cake that we can create, and then each of our slices of cake is going to be exponentially bigger.
Oh, I love
and
that.
so we really try to bake in that opportunity for growth. And we talk a lot about, we're a very open company. We're super, super transparent in basically everything with our team, both the good and the bad. And we try to talk a lot about equity. One of the first discussions we have with anyone who joins our team is, this is the equity you're being granted. How much is it going to be worth if we're the size of Atlassian, if we're the size of Canva, if we go to the size of Culture Amp, what is going to be the financial outcome for you, to help them to understand that they're an actual owner. Try to get them over all the lack of understanding that I had at Atlassian, where I was like, oh, I've got this equity, that's cool. We actually try to make sure that our team understands that they actually genuinely own a piece of this cake, and it's up to them to make it as successful as possible, because they're going to get the financial reward at the end of it.
Mate, I couldn't have asked for a better little segment there. I was just about to ask about Kind and the culture and leadership, and like, it's incredible. You just like smashed that section. I just love hearing that. I feel like you really excel with the way you think about the world, the way you think about people and teams. And it is all about people. It is all about doing great things with great people and doing something meaningful together. I mean, that's sort of how I would normally describe it. I think you described it much better. And we talk so much about a cake, and Startup Equity Matters. A big part of our mission here is really trying to help people understand what is equity really worth. I mean, worst case scenario, you've got 10% of your company goes out the door, which could be worth, hundreds, millions of dollars down the track, and you're getting very little value from it other than like a party at the end. Like, you want to be attracting better talent, engaging and retaining them better, and just having a better feeling and culture within the company that we're all in this together and we're all going on this journey together. And if we succeed, we all succeed. The rules of the plan are balanced so that if the founders succeed, the team succeed. It's not that like, the founder can sell his shares and you're going to be like left on the scrap heap or what have you. So I absolutely love, hearing how you've taken all those learnings and leadership and culture from your career and bringing that into Kind. That's super, super cool. So I guess you just answered like so many of my questions.
Sorry, jumped ahead.
No, it's awesome. I'm just thinking like how do we now just extract out a little bit more like detail about some of the actions and processes and systems that you use at Kind to practically implement this great vision and culture. So how do you, so what do you do when you're hiring perhaps, or, what do you do with your all hands, or, how are you currently communicating with your team to, build your culture and generate value from your equity?
So employee experience and culture are things that have to be very deliberately designed. They don't just happen by accident. You can try leave them up to accident, and a lot of companies are really great by leaving things like that up to accident. But I really am a big believer that you start by intentionally crafting that culture. I think this is just my design background, and so when I think about anything, I think about it from a
everything is design. Yeah,
exactly. Everything
totally
is design,
agree.
right? And I think that the greatest company leaders in the world have fundamentally been at their hearts designers. Steve Jobs was a designer. He could have whatever title he had, but his ultimate job was to be the architect, the designer of Apple Computer. And likewise, I see my role as kind of designing the experience of the people who work for Kind. A lot of them are going to spend their entire careers, hopefully, working for Kind. We want to make sure that they have a really great experience and it's aligned to the values of the company that we're trying to build. And so before we actually ever hired a single person, before we had basically even written a single line of the Kind product, we had values. And those values were you have a choice when you're building a company. The standard way is you start your company, you hire a bunch of people, and a few years down the line, you hire people typically who you want to have a beer with, or who kind of look like you, and who you kind of want to work with.
I
Right?
totally agree. Absolutely.
That's what everyone does. And to me, you're kind of leaving your culture and your values up to the toss of the coin, right? It's just totally chance whether they will be successful. And then at some point during that journey, you go and you say, well, we have a bunch of people who feel like they represent us and what we want to be. And you try to codify those learnings into a set of values. And so you go and you write this fancy set of values that's based on what you've learned from the people that you have working there. We said, that seems crazy. We don't want to play Russian roulette with our own values. We don't want to play Russian roulette with the culture that we're creating. Let's go and deliberately craft this. And so we had those values from day one. And those values were an attempt to say, this is the company that we want to become. These are the people that we want to have working here, and the things we want them to aspire to achieve. And so we use every one of those values. Every single person who joins the company goes to a values interview, because we think it's so important that they are aligned to the way we see the world and the things that we want to be. And values are really important. A lot of people think of them as basically, just a concept for making everybody in management feel good, whereas they're platitudes largely, and a lot of values are platitudes. Whereas we said every one of our values, in another company, it could be something that they don't necessarily want to be, and so.
I think it should be like a filtering process when you're hiring. Like when you say your values, when you're hiring, it should force some people to not apply, I think. And you don't want to be exclusive per se. Well, you are being by definition exclusive, but it's not like non-diverse exclusivity. It's just like, these are the things we believe in.
Yeah.
This is how we're going to behave. This isn't a joke. Like when you come in, this is how we're going to be behaving.
Yeah.
And so
100%.
Don't be surprised if, this is what we do, because we mean these things.
Yeah.
Totally.
We have a value, human kindness, general manners. And I'd say that's like the pervading one that you can see reflected in the human beings that work at Kind. They just embody that value. And so it means, where in other organizations, you'd have politicians, you'd have people who are, just trying to get their piece of the cake. We actually have a group of people who are there to support each other, to help each other grow, to show human kindness and gentleness to each other. And I think it's just having that in place really makes a big difference.
And so ownership was a big part of the culture and the values of the company, and that's sort of the key to how it's then become like a successful part of their business.
Absolutely, yeah. So ownership is baked into our values, create a bigger pie, but it's also just something that we discuss very early on. So before anyone joins, we sit down with them and have a conversation about what their equity is going to be worth, make sure they understand what equity is. And I often take them through a little bit of kind of my backstory to help them understand, I've done really well out of Atlassian and Shopify, and I want that same opportunity for you, and I want you to own it.
I love that. I think we've got Atlassian in Cake. So in Cake, we've got a feature where you can say how many options you've got, and then you can say like, which company do you want to peg yourself against? I'm pretty sure I got Atlassian in there. I think we might even have Shopify in there as well. Yeah. But I wish I was actually from those companies, because when I'm hiring, my pitch about equity value creation would be a lot more real. It'd be hard for them to look at you and go, "Oh no, this can never happen," because you're living proof. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it does happen. It doesn't happen often, but I think what's so important is that people understand that they have the opportunity to make it, and if you think about driving people to be highly motivated, to be engaged, there's no better way than saying to them, "You own this company." If you're looking for, if you're climbing Everest, you don't want people who are focused on the hot chocolate stand. You want people who are focused on getting to the top of Everest. You want people to be focused on the top of Everest. You make sure that they own the expedition.
Love it.
And so, it's made a huge difference for us. Our team understands ownership. It also changes the way they make decisions. If you think about, most decisions are made fairly selfishly, but when you are making a decision that will actually affect the outcome of the company, and that outcome is yours, you're going to make decisions that actually suit the outcome of the company.
Love it. especially if you've got visibility and you can see where the company's at, where it's going, and you've got these touch points and it's really real, then you can make those decisions because you can sort of see in your own mind how you're able to impact those outcomes. So
Yeah.
look, absolutely fantastic. I feel like you've got more passion and awareness about this stuff than I do. So thanks so much
Probably not.
for joining and sharing. Well, whichever way it is, you're an absolute gun at this, and so I'm so appreciative, and I'm just really, really grateful that you've come on to share with everyone your insights. That's so valuable. So, look, in the interest of time, unfortunately, I have to jump on to the final question. We always finish with, a creative, healthy lifestyle question. We're big advocates at Cake that, your health and your mental health is a great framework for creativity and success and tackling these tremendous challenges that we have in innovation, which sometimes do feel like climbing Everest. So, how do you relate to that concept, and what sort of insights or habits are you able to share with everyone around that?
I mean, as a founder, I think every founder knows this. It's incredibly hard to keep healthy. It has to be a deliberate intent thing, and it really has taken me the longest time as a founder to try and to actively invest in my health and through exercise and trying to improve my diet and things like that. But I think that one of the things that if you think about it, it's not just me, it's my team as well. It's all the people who work for Kind who give their lives towards it as well. And so we try to make sure that baked into the culture of the company is an allowance to not take life too seriously. And so our sixth value, probably the most important one, is stay foolish. We talk about that at every single all hands every Friday. Is just a reminder that if we're doing this and we're not having fun, then why the hell are we doing it? Because life's just going to be a pretty shitty place to be. And so stay foolish, I think, is just such a great reminder for me every time I look at our values, every time we have our all hands and we talk about that, just such an important reminder to me to not take life too seriously. Because if you get too in your own head, if you get too focused on negativity, you're never going to build something great. And you have to, when you're building a company, you have to have the most crazy, outlandish, delusional people along with you for the journey, because who the hell else is going to go and do it? And so staying foolish, I think, is just a big key part to that. Coming at life with optimism and naivety and trying things that nobody's ever tried to do before, because that's what we're doing at the start.
Absolutely love that. I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for sharing. So, Ross, really grateful for your time today. You're an incredibly successful guy. You've got a fantastic new company, Kind, on the go. Look, I'm sure you've all got great value out of that. For engineers and CTOs and founders out there, definitely check out Kind. It seems like you're going to have a great product with Ross and his team behind it. I think we're going to look at Cake making I Am an Owner shirts. I don't know if I have to check with the Atlassian guys to see if they're happy for us to borrow or steal that, because I think that's just such a great t-shirt idea.
Awesome idea. Yeah.
And another little insight I had, because this is for employees as well, and not that I'm advocating people changing jobs necessarily. I'm not trying to talk them into changing jobs, but think about, maybe there are some listed companies or companies in general that you really, really believe in. Their equity is probably going to be priced much lower than it was a few years ago. And so look for great founders like Ross with great employee ownership culture, where that if you can all work together and build a great company, you can come off this low share price and really benefit in that upside. So hopefully, that's just a nice little takeaway to finish on. Thank you, Ross. Thanks for joining.
Anytime. It's great to chat. Thank you, Jason.
Stay foolish out there.
Stay foolish.